Plus the latest play, M. Butterfly, the French diplomat who thought his Chinese lover was a woman. Anthony Hopkins, regarded by many as the finest stage actor of his generation, opens at the Shaftesbury Theatre, London next month, just a year after he surprised the profession by saying he was retiring. He'll be starring in the first British production of an American play which has captured Broadway's most prestigious awards. It borrows from the legend of Madame Butterfly, but as our arts correspondent Stephen Phillips reports, its enigmatic title, M. Butterfly, also reflects a remarkable true story.
One fine day in Leicester, the results of some incongruous theatrical alchemy will be revealed. In 3 weeks' time, the town will host not an exhibition of Oriental martial arts, but the opening of the most successful play to hit Broadway in several years. Prior to its London season, the Leicester Haymarket Theatre will mount a production featuring the exacting disciplines of Peking opera, and based with polite nods towards Madame Butterfly on a story so bizarre and improbable that it has to be true.
I was actually having dinner with some friends, and somebody said, did you ever hear about this French diplomat who fell in love with this Chinese actress who turned out to be a man? And I thought, well, that's kind of an interesting notion. And at that point, I read about 2 paragraphs about it in the New York Times and started to think of some way to formulate it into a play.
The story goes back to Peking in the 60s and 70s, both before and after Mao's Cultural Revolution. The characters are a diplomat at the French legation and his lover of 2 decades, a star of the Peking opera. But in 1983, Bernard Boursicot, who'd returned to France along with Shei Pei-pu and their supposed child, was arrested for espionage. She, it transpired, was a male agent who'd adopted the child and persuaded Boursicot it was his. Throughout, Boursicot insisted he'd not known the true sex of his lover. Both were jailed for 6 years.
The actual diplomat was quoted as trying to explain why it was that he'd never seen his Chinese lover naked. And he said, well, I thought she was very modest. I thought it was a Chinese custom. And I thought, well, that's not actually true. But it is consistent with a certain sort of stereotyped view of the way that Asians act, sort of bowing, shuffling business. And so I thought, well, this man probably fell in love, therefore, not with a person, but with sort of a fantasy stereotype. And that led me into the whole idea of Madame Butterfly and the way that the East and West relate, as well as the way that men and women relate. And it seems to me that given the amount of misperception that goes on between all these groups, it's sort of inevitable that a mistake of this magnitude would have someday taken place.
With M. Butterfly, Los Angeles-born Hwang became the first Chinese-American playwright to win no less than 3 Tony Awards. The not inconsiderable task of translating it to the stage fell to the leading British director, John Dexter, now working with a new cast on the British production.
When a script like that falls into your hands unsolicited, all you can do is get down and thank God. I hadn't read a script as well articulated as that. It was beautifully constructed. I mean, it was exciting to read because the attention was caught on the first page, and then that wonderful thing you sometimes get in reading, oh God, don't let him make a mistake every time he's doing no, and one by one he avoided the mistakes and wrote an absolutely fascinating play.
In the role of the diplomat, Dexter cast Anthony Hopkins, who played the lead in his production of Equus in New York 15 years ago. Despite pulling a muscle, Hopkins bravely joined the Peking opera-style warm-up class, expressing his British individuality by remaining a resolute half-beat behind his colleagues.
When you're working with directors like Dexter, you know exactly where you are. His methods sometimes are unorthodox and sometimes, well, no, I used to think they were brutal, but he's got a great sense of humor, so we all have a good laugh. But he's very demanding. He says, come on, I want you to do this and do that, and come and you can do it. And what he does then, it inspires your confidence in yourself, because he's saying that you can do it. And sometimes it's painful. I think all those directors, people like Kazan, Dexter, push people to the limit. And it breaks something in you, and then you break beyond the bounds of your own ego.
Butterfly!
The limits of my prison cell are as such: 4.5 meters by 5. There's one window against the far wall, a door, very strong, to protect me from autograph hounds. I'm responsible for the tape recorder, the hot plate, and this charming coffee table. When I want to eat, I marched off to the dining room. Hot steaming slop appears on my plate. When I want to sleep, the light bulb turns itself off. The work of fairies. It is an enchanted space I occupy. The French. We know how to run a prison.
Sure, that's right. Can you keep that noise down out there, please? The second butterfly is gone, and that leads you to seeing the audience. So prior to that,
Okay.
as far as you're concerned, haven't been there. Then you've got to have a moment of, oh God, I've got to start again. I've got to go right there. And again, if you can get a glimpse of hostility in 30 seconds, that wouldn't be bad either.
All
Then
right.
He always encourages actors not to flirt with an audience, but to be brutal. Very much like Kazan. Attack an audience. And I like that.
Yes, you seem to be setting out in your opening speech for a fair degree of alienation.
Yes. Nothing personal.
With Hopkins, Dexter, 3 Tonys, and a tale of improbable sex and intrigue, M. Butterfly has excellent form.
well, yes, that's only to my taste. My taste isn't always in line with the public's or the press, but we'll just, you read it, it has to be done. Whether you do it in a cellar or in Drury Lane, one of those must be done.